Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range to talk about a brand new cartridge, the 338 ARC. So we've done a video on this already. We interviewed Seth from Hornady to talk about the cartridge back in 24 before the cartridge was available on the market. Right now, the guns and ammunition are starting to ship, but the ammunition is still a little bit hard to get your hands on. I'm waiting on more ammunition right now. As of today, I have 5 boxes, 3 boxes of subs, 2 boxes of supers. So this isn't going to be a complete video. This will be the beginning of a 2-part series talking about the 338 ARC. Today is kind of a first shots video. We want to get some velocity data, take a closer look at the cartridges, and talk a little bit about the history between the 338 ARC, 300 Blackout, and 8.6 Blackout. So before we get started with today's video, just to give you an idea, here is the 300 Blackout. Love this cartridge. This is either one of the most useful cartridges in modern history, or it's one of the most useless, depending on who you ask. I love the 300 Blackout. The utility of being able to go from subs to supers is very valuable to me, and I think it's an outstanding cartridge and one of the coolest cartridges currently on the market. This is the next step in the evolution, if you will, of the Blackout series. This also comes from Kevin Brittingham. This is from Q, and this is the 8.6 Blackout. So the 300 Blackout is based on a 30 caliber bullet, think 308, and the 8.6 Blackout is based on a 338 bullet. So it's a larger diameter bullet. So these two, again, are both capable of super and sub loadings, which gives you quite a bit functionality. Now with the 8.6, because the bigger, heavier bullet with the subsonic offerings, you can get more energy out of it than you can a 300 Blackout shooting a subsonic bullet, because you're capped at about 1,000 feet per second. So increasing the bullet weight is the only way to increase the energy or the power of a subsonic cartridge like the 300 Blackout or the 8.6 Blackout. The 338, this is an example of a super, and this is an example of a sub. You'll notice that they're about the same overall length as the 300 Blackout, and that's because they're designed to operate in magazines similar to the Stenag magazine. They actually, even though we've had them work in this 20-round Stenag magazine, ideally having a 6.5 Grendel or a 6 ARC magazine would be better for those cartridges if you're going to load them all the way up. And so that's something to keep in mind. With the 8.6 Blackout, it works on a standard SR25, PMag, whatever that's out there. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of shooting with it. Again, we're going to get some velocity data using our Garmin Zero and do a little bit of shooting with it, get an idea of what this gun runs like. This is the CMMG Dissent. This is the first gun I've seen on the market that chambers a 338 ARC, although more should be hitting the market now fairly quickly. On top, I have a Primary Arms GLX 4-16 optic. And yeah, on the end, we have an inert Haze 1. This is a 9mm can, but it's rated for, you know, like 300 Blackout supers and things like that. And because it's 9mm, it's large enough diameter to allow the 338 to pass through it. We talked about this in our interview with Seth. The 338 ARC is capable of being suppressed by 9mm suppressors, assuming that the 9mm suppressor is compatible with supersonic loadings. And you want to check with the manufacturer before you use a suppressor on the 338 ARC that's intended for 9mm. With all that being said, let's do some shooting with this bad boy, because the 338 ARC has a lot of, or I have a lot of interest in it. And hopefully you guys see my interest and share that interest, and maybe you'll be inclined to go out and experiment with it. It is expensive because it's a brand new cartridge. It's kind of like where 300 Blackout was a few years ago. Really cool, but also really expensive. The prices are coming down because more and more people are making guns and ammo for it, and that competition brings the price down. Economy of scale. That hasn't happened with a 338 ARC yet. Will it? We don't know. Can't predict how new cartridges will perform, but I'm optimistic. Let's take a closer look.
A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below.
All right, so we're going to start off shooting some of the subsonics. I have a couple of rounds loaded in here. We're going to run our Garmin Zero to get some velocity data. And I'm going to start off with the subs. I really enjoy the subsonic aspect of these cartridges, right? This is what really kind of draws me to them. The supers are nice. That's great for hunting and things like that, or if you want to shoot a little bit further. But for what I want to do, I like the short range, 50, 100 yards capability, but the extreme suppression you get when you're able to launch rifle bullets at less than 1,000 feet per second. So that's the real draw for me. I love having the ability to jump up to supers, but I primarily use these types of cartridges as subsonics. Keep in mind, people ask why. Well, 45 ACP has the same amount of energy as a subsonic 300 blackout. Yeah, but you're shooting a Spitzer type bullet that resists the wind, carries its velocity longer because it's more aerodynamic, meaning you can extend the range well past what 45 ACP is capable of. And so that's why, again, I love these types of cartridges. All right, so let's do a little bit of shooting, 3 rounds. And see what we get for velocity. So the first shot was 995 feet per second. .9. So we're seeing some deviation there. And 1,016. So let's pull that data here really quick, because this is kind of interesting, folks. So in our conversations with Hornady, right, one of the things that they said was that you would see better standard deviation, meaning you would see a reduced amount of velocity spread between shot to shot with the Subsonic 338 arc because the case was smaller, the position of the powder in the case. So when you have a big case like the 8.6, Hornady was saying that the powder lays flat in the case because of the high volume of the case, low volume of the powder. And so when it's positionally like aimed downwards, the powder is going to fall forward. You're going to get inconsistent burn, 60, 70, 80 feet per second, which is going to cause your accuracy to be all over the place. So the promise was with the smaller case, more of a compressed charge, if you will, the powder doesn't have as much free reign to move around in the case because it's going to be more of a compressed type charge. The powder is going to stay in about the same position. So in theory, those shot-to-shot velocities should be much closer. That was what we were told. But at least at the moment, the first 3 shots that we fired here over the chronograph, we have a standard deviation spread of 20.3 feet per second, which isn't horrible, okay? So our minimum was 995, our maximum was 1016. So, okay, so it's not a huge spread. So that's actually pretty good. All right, so again, that's one of the promises of it. We saw much higher velocity spread in our early testing of the 8.6 blackout when using the subsonics, especially when we had shake the powder forward. So we'll try that with the arc as well. So let's do that really quick. Let's shake some of that powder forward. Let me see that. That spent case was just laying in there. Didn't get kicked out. Shouldn't cause a malfunction. That by itself, when you go to reload the magazine, the spent case would fall out, but still not a good idea to have that happen. All right, so what we're going to do is we put 3 more rounds of the Subsonic in here. I'm going to load it, kind of put the muzzle down, and what I'm trying to do is get that powder to fall forward in those cases, and then let's see what our velocity looks like. .1,001 feet per second. .984. .998. So about the same spread. Let's see what she says here. All right, spread on that one was 16.6 feet per second, so 1,001 versus 984. All right. So that doesn't seem to be too shabby. Now, one of the things that I thought was really interesting in our conversation with Seth at Hornady was that the supers and the subs both operate at the same pressure. Okay, so that's interesting because when you're using a gas gun like this Dissent, if you're operating at the same pressure, if pressures aren't spiking considerably for the supers versus the subs, then in theory, the gas system doesn't really need to be messed with much at all. And so with the Dissent, it does have an adjustable gas block on it, but it doesn't have a quick adjustment like a switch from supers to subs. In the 338 ARC, that doesn't appear to be a problem. Now, the 338 ARC supers are spicy. All right, we notice that right away. But the gun doesn't appear to be overgassed. You're just pushing a lighter bullet at higher velocity, over 900 feet per second faster than the Subsonic. And so you're going to get a little bit more recoil, right? But the gun seems to run just fine. We have 3 rounds. Yeah, 3 rounds of the 307 grain. So this, I'm sorry, the subs are 307 grain. These are 175 grain supers. And let's see what we get for velocity on these. What's crazy is at 50 yards, the supers and subs are hitting within an inch of each other. Now, at 100 yards, that opens up considerably. But at 50, they're right on top of each other. The accuracy seems to be good. Those two at 50 just stacked. We're at 1935 feet per second. I didn't read off the first one. We'll get it to you here in a second. Yeah, it's really good. And 1945. So let's see what the 3 shots look like. So we had a spread. This is great. 9.8 spread, standard deviation 4.2, max 1945, min 1935. That's really good in the supers. That should give really, really good accuracy. Okay. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. So you probably saw that the gun had more pep in its step, right? Had a little bit more recoil to it. Not totally unmanageable by any means, but it is less than 308. More than 300 blackout supers, so there's a definite noticeable increase in recoil, but it's not something that's unpleasant or unmanageable. Now, I could, if I ran supers primarily in this, I could start to dial that gas back a little bit and just get it where it barely operates, you know, get it where it's just cycling and locks open and give it one extra twist or one extra click. But I'm not going to do that with this because I do want to be able to jump back between supers and subs without having to mess with my gas system. Right now, the gun's running just fine with both loads. Wow, that's really, really cool. All right, let's do some more shooting with it. We'll stretch the legs out a little bit. We'll see if we can't get out to 250 with the supers here. All right, so I have a few rounds of the supers loaded up. I'm going to start off at 150 yards, and then I'm going to kind of work my way out to 250, and then maybe I'll go to 3. We'll see. So 150 first. Go to 200. I think I'm hitting high. I can't hear if I'm hitting steel or if I'm hitting stuff in here with spent cases. So that was 250. So yeah, it's hitting a bit high. So let's try 300. I'm almost dead aiming at 250 and it hit. So I'll try little favor high at 300. Wow, it hit and rocked that plate. A full man-size plate. That's a good 60 pounds. All right, we'll try 350. That's my furthest distance. I can't tell. Anyway, all right, cool. So yeah, I mean, you're going to be able to stretch the legs on it. Now, keep in mind, I zeroed it to subs, then I started shooting supers, and I realized that it was just maybe an inch high at 50, but it's considerably higher, several feet at 100 yards. So I don't know what my dope is perfectly for those extended ranges. That's really cool. The ability to go out to 300 yards is going to be nice, I think, with 2,000 feet per second with a 175 grain bullet. That's going to give you enough energy to hunt deer in the Midwest and things like that. So it's really kind of cool. Take a look at this cartridge, guys. What we need to do is pull a bullet out so we get an understanding of just how far down the case this bullet is set, right? So look at that little tiny case. I mean, how crazy is that? It's all bullet. It's almost like the bullet's just about the same length as the brass. Kind of a crazy looking cartridge. Now, keep in mind, guys, also with the 3038 ARC, so the 8.6 blackout, you're looking at a twist rate at about 1 in 3. So it'll make 1 revolution every 3 inches. It's a very tight twist rate. In our conversation with Kevin, and he talked about that they could go 1 to 1. So 1 revolution in 1 inch, they would get really good performance out of it. And when you're spinning a bullet that fast, that spin torque, when it hits soft tissue, does translate into more energy transferred, and it does do more damage to soft tissue. Now, with the 338 ARC, This particular rifle is set up with a 1 in 8 twist, which is very similar to what you might find in some 300 blackouts, but 1 in 5 is something that I've used quite a bit in my SIG Rattler, and I really like that twist rate. So with the subsonics and the heavy bullets, it's not uncommon to see the fast twist rates, but in this particular gun, it's set up with the 1 in 8, and CMMG tells me they went with the 1 in 8 twist because that's what was recommended to them by Hornady. And again, that did come up in our discussion with Hornady and Seth. So very interesting information, I think. So this is a 338 ARC, and we've pulled a bullet. This is a 175 grain bullet. Here's the powder charge, and then here's the case. So if you take a look, when the bullet is loaded, it'd be setting about there, so it doesn't really set any deeper than the neck itself. And so you have the entire volume of the case back here that you can fill with powder. And it looks like they've pretty effectively done that with the Super. Quite a bit of powder in there, okay? So that's why we're not seeing a huge deviation in velocity. The case is full. All right, check this out. That is the Subsonic. Look at the bullet, dude. That is insane. That is insane. So the bullet next to the case is actually bigger than the case. All right, so when you have this bullet seated in the ARC case, you can see that it's taken up most of the case. Has half the volume that the Super has. And it's using a different type of powder. A fuller powder. It's a very fine powder on the Super. A fuller powder on the Sub. And again, it's filling the case up. And yeah, so there's no room for that powder to move around in there. Again, so positionally, it's not going to make a big difference in velocity. Very cool. That is a huge pill. Wow. I'm really glad I pulled that apart. That's kind of neat. Just really quick, one thing I didn't think about in the previous segment. So here we have a scale, and this is the 175 grain bullet. So we'll set that on the scale, and it weighs 174.7.8. Kind of jumped back and forth there. So pretty close to the advertised bullet weight. This is the 307 grain bullet, 306.9. So very consistent in what it's promising in terms of bullet weight. All right, so there you go. So here is the 8.6 Blackout Dissent that we've featured in video here on the channel before, and here is the 338 ARC rifle. Now, the ARC, obviously, that you see here is an SBR, right? And it's available as a pistol, an SBR, or you can get a longer barrel rifle, 60-inch barrel. Keep in mind, the longer the barrel you go, especially with the Supers, that's going to make a difference in velocity, right? So if you go to 60-inch barrel with a supersonic load, you're going to get probably over 2,000 feet per second. Right now, we're just under 2,000 with the barrel in this SBR. But we do want to find out, since we have two comparable rifles here, we're going to find out what the accuracy looks like in a future video with the 338 ARC and then also the 8.6 Blackout. I also want to do a future video doing a little bit deeper dive into 8.6 Blackout versus the 338 ARC in terms of that positional bullet velocity stuff and see if we can better understand some of the differences between the larger case 8.6 and the smaller case 338 ARC. There's just so much stuff here to unpack because you have two competitive cartridges that are kind of going for the same market, but at two different angles. Here we have an AR-10 sized rifle. Here we have an AR-15 sized rifle. But then this rifle uses those, special magazines, which I'm not a huge fan of. This uses standard SR-25 mags, but this seems to be better perhaps at subsonic loads than maybe the 8.6. This is all stuff we got to sort out, guys. That's going to take a lot of testing and additional videos, and we'll talk about that in future videos here on the Military Arms channel. If you guys have any questions about these two setups, if you have something specifically you want us to look into with the 338 ARC or the 8.6 Blackout, comment down below, because many times you read those comments, you give us ideas for future videos. Also, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, the best way to do that is to become part of our Patreon family. There's a link in the video description below. You'll get early access to videos like this. You have direct access to me. I answer all private communications. So please check that out. Again, link down below. Right here on YouTube, you got the thanks and support button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Hit either one of those support buttons or either one of those buttons, and you can help support us here on YouTube right now in the age of demonetization. Swing by, check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 17 years of support. We'll talk to you guys soon.